This is Leeds Student Radio.
Sound.
Students
In Leeds.
Delivering over 100 hours of broadcasting made by 300 students every week.
Hello.
Hello. Hello and welcome.
And
it's all about you.
You.
This is Leeds Student Radio.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was once a bar that sold TV dinners to pop culture fanatics. That era is about to be reborn!
From toasted sandwiches to chili, all-day breakfasts to pot noodles, head down to Fab Cafe for the ultimate TV dinner.
Fab Cafe, the world's first television and movie-themed bar.
Live from Leeds University Union.
At the heart of your student life.
The things that matter to you.
Your news. Your views. Your life in Leeds.
Live at 5.
This is The Beat.
In association with Amber Cars.
Download our app for the quickest taxi service in Leeds.
A family-run business with over 40 years' experience in providing affordable and reliable accommodation.
Winners of the Leeds Landlord Award.
You should look no further than Spencer Properties when choosing where to live next year.
Spencer Properties own all the homes they let out and work closely with the Knowledge Project to promote safe, reliable housing for student and professional communities.
Visit spencer-properties.co.uk for more information and follow @SpencerProp on Twitter for all their latest listings.
Spencer Properties, the #1 provider of quality accommodation in Leeds.
Top tips from the Student Advice Centre.
Join a club or society as it's a great way to meet loads of like-minded people and get involved.
There are loads of part-time job opportunities in Leeds that'll keep any financial worries at bay, or pop into your Student Advice Centre to help with budgeting and money management.
Staying safe in a new city can be stressful for some. Here at the Student Advice Centre, you can chat to us about anything in confidence, whether it's academic or personal.
And remember, the Student Advice Centre is here for you.
This is Leeds Student Radio.
Need a DJ? Well, look no further. LSR provide the equipment and the music. Email info@lsrfm.com for more details.
I'm gonna pop some tags, only got $20 in my pocket.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day from Leeds University Union.
The sound of students in Leeds.
this is Leeds Student Radio.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Natural World here on Leeds Student Radio. You're listening to Emma Caton
and Ekbal Hussain.
And we're very glad to be back for another show. As ever, we talk about lots of great stuff to do with like fascinating facts, latest discoveries, what's on TV, and even how you can get involved with nature, conservation, things like Earth, and also the environment. So, as ever, I'll be taking the first half, and this is going to be very based on wildlife and what's new in the wildlife world and ecology. And Ekbal will be taking the second half on Earth and environment.
Yep, and I'll be talking about volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and disasters like that.
And
riveting
just
stuff.
General things to do with disasters. So, the main story that I'm going to be talking about today is the Malta bird massacre, and also coming up a bit later on, how climate change may be making male bees more interested in sex than pollinating flowers, which is quite interesting. And then coming up in Ekbal's show.
Yeah, I'll be talking about. I'll be playing an interview about the gas emissions from Icelandic volcanic eruptions, and talking a little bit about Hollywood. Well, not about the films, unfortunately, but about how it's lying on top of a very active fault line, so earthquakes. And maybe if we have time, talk about the IPCC report.
And that's all to come up a bit later. So, kicking off, we're going to talk about our main story, which, as I said, was the Malta bird massacre. And I had heard a little bit about this, but it's actually Ekbal who mainly drew it to my attention. He went to a conference last week, was it? Yeah, earlier this week about it. And I'll just give you a bit of basic information about it. Thousands of migrating birds are being killed in Malta, which is one of Britain's very favourite holiday destinations. I myself have been there as well. It's a very beautiful little island just off the coast of Italy. Well, quite a bit south of Italy, actually. But and the bad news is, because of all this massacre that's going on of these birds, it's bad news for a lot of the UK's threatened species, such as the turtle dove, which I'll be coming on to a bit later. And yeah, Malta has actually now been named as possibly the worst place in the world to be a bird, because these massacres are just so horrific and on an incredible scale. And a lot of these birds which are migrating back to British back gardens are getting killed. And Malta actually has the highest concentration of registered hunters in Europe, so that's another one of the main reasons why.
In the world, I think, actually.
Is it
the highest density of hunters in the world, because it's a small island. And quite a large portion of it hunts.
It's quite a big sport over there, isn't it? Unfortunately, yeah. But yeah, even the birds that are actually lucky enough to avoid the guns, from what I've been reading, they also illegally trap birds. Now this is supposed to be completely illegal, and they capture them in mist nets. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
I haven't. No. What are they?
Well, we actually, interestingly enough, when I was on a South Africa field course a few weeks ago, and we actually used mist netting to trap and tag birds and then release them back. And basically you sling a massive net across an area of trees. It's very, what's the word, transparent. You can see transparent. Like, yeah, you can't really see it. It's quite well hidden, and basically birds fly into the net, and because it's so thin, all the wires, they get themselves caught. So you can go and take them off the net, and then we tagged them and then release them. But here they're obviously not releasing them; they're just catching them like this. And
yeah, I don't know what do they actually do with the birds they kill.
Do you know what? I actually could not find anything that said what they actually do with. I mean, I can understand that. Well, I can understand why they shoot them from the sky. It's just sport there, but I don't understand why they would capture them alive.
Strange.
And then I don't know. Maybe it's just the thrill of trying to catch something in the net. I don't know. It's really strange, but and yeah, as I said before, one of the rarest birds that is being hunted in this area is the turtle dove. And that has actually been singled out by the hunters as a key target. They actually specifically target these birds despite the fact they are quite endangered. And the dove has actually declined by 95% in the UK as a result.
Shocking.
And that's since the 1970s, so it's declined massively in the last few decades. And there are obviously now real fears that it'll become extinct in Britain as a breeding bird, because because of this hunting that, it's not even been done anywhere on the British Isles. It's, miles away, and it's kind of knock-on effect.
Malta is a really strategic location for wildlife, and it was actually really interesting strategically for the British invasions of Europe, etc., the colony, all that business.
That's true.
And because it's a strategic location within the Mediterranean, and also, like you said, it's south of Italy. It's a key island for migrating birds from Europe to Africa, and they have, because they cross in the Mediterranean, they have to stop or pause on the island to
it is a key rest site, and that is the problem. So many birds are resting on this site, and unfortunately it happens to be the wrong kind of island to rest on in terms of hunters, and so many of them are just getting killed. And it's not just the turtle dove as well. There's a lot of rare species that are under threat. And the interesting thing is, though, spring hunting is actually, like I said, banned by the EU, but the Maltese authorities obtain an exemption from this every year for reasons I have absolutely no idea of. But
it's strange, yeah.
I can't understand why Malta is exempt from this, but it baffles me a bit, but there you go.
I don't know. I think they play with the cultural norms and things like that.
Probably, yes.
They have specific seasons they're allowed to hunt certain
they do.
Specific birds they're allowed to shoot, but actually they're indiscriminately shooting anything that flies above them.
That is the problem, actually. Yeah. I mean, one thing I did read up about this as well is they have a limit on the number of birds they can hunt. But it is not policed at all. It really isn't. People are just going and shooting what they want. People aren't doing anything about it. And that's the reason why so many birds are in decline, because although these regulations are in place, people are just ignoring it, and it's not really being policed. So that's the main issue.
It's also highly political. So Malta, as it's a small island, the people who can vote, and aren't that many actually, and the votes can swing either way by the hunters. So if the political party is almost, it has to go on the hunter side, because if he wants votes, and if the hunters
that's
don't
true,
like
actually,
it,
that's very true.
Vote the other side. So this is why there's a political almost safeguarding there as well.
It's quite sad, really, isn't it, that they just try and keep people happy, even though it's wrong. Really,
it's wrong. It's illegal as well. It is actually illegal what they're doing, not by Maltese standards and the European standards. And actually now, they're hunting these birds aren't just Maltese birds. These are Europe's birds, European
They are,
birds.
exactly, yeah.
They're British birds, they're the rest of Europe. And they're hunting these birds and killing them en route while they're migrating.
They are,
so
yes.
It's not just a Maltese problem, it's our problem now, and we need to do something about it.
Well, that is the main thing, yeah, and I suppose it's because if a bird isn't permanently nestled on the island, and you can't really see the effects as much, people don't think it's a problem to be shooting these birds that are just passing through, because they assume there's thousands of them, but they don't realise how many they are shooting, and it is a phenomenal amount. It's thousands of birds, and like I said, it is having a knock-on effect on our dove populations, because they are now very much in decline, and this is obviously not helping at all with it, as so many are being killed. And I mean, the interesting thing is this is not a new thing by any means. This has been going on for decades, this massacre in Malta, but it's not really been brought to the attention until now, when BBC Wildlife presenter Chris Packham actually told the story about this issue of spring hunting and he brought the attention of this to the British public. So now people are becoming more aware of the issue. So I mean, you said at the conference, didn't you? They played a video about it.
Yeah, one of the photographers, the filmmakers, was at the conference, and they said they had to do this all independently. They weren't funded by the BBC or any other wildlife trust. They, from using money from their own pockets, four of them went over to Malta and did short handheld films, and they posted them on YouTube and used Twitter, etc., to raise awareness of the issue. And Chris Packham was there from BBC Nature Documentaries, and it raised the profile of what's going on there. And there is a website so that you can still vote and you can still donate, and put some pressure on the Maltese government to do something about this.
That's good. Well, that's what needs to happen now, really. Now the British public have been made more aware of it, maybe there will be some kind of campaigning and things like that to try and stop, this horrific thing that is going on out there. But yeah, I mean, did he say he spent 10 days there, was it?
I don't remember, yeah.
It was something like that, yeah. And I actually did read up a bit about the videos and like some of the interviews he'd done about it, and you know, he did say that he was approached many times by people there who were hunting. They were harassed by some of the armed hunters for filming and things like that. He said it was absolutely awful.
It's horrible. They showed a video actually of, because they had national parks, they're free to walk in, etc. And these guys were walking through the park with their camera, Chris Packham in front, and they're filming him. And these hunters come out of the trees and they start saying, "No, you can't walk here. This is our property, our land."
Mm-hmm.
And they had these giant guns that they were shooting with. And whereas in reality they were walking along, you know, public paths in a public nature reserve.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it's actually shocking what goes on there.
It really is.
And these are all off the tourist trails, so you know the tourists don't get to see these things.
Yes.
Is off the tourist tracks.
I was about to ask, like, whereabouts does it actually go on? Because I mean, when I was there, I had no knowledge of it at all. You know, you don't really see it.
It's strategic almost. The tourists are always taken away from these areas where there's illegal activity in terms of dove and wildlife killing and things like that.
So in a way, it's something they're severely trying to cover up. They're not
they're
like,
almost covering up, yes.
Well, I suppose it is technically illegal.
Well, it's not technically, it is illegal what they're doing, yes.
So I suppose they just don't want people to know about it. And, you know, I did read up as well that the hunters are obviously absolutely furious that Chris Packham has now brought this to the attention of the British public, and, you know, a lot kind of needs to be done now, and, you know, it's kind of given, like, people who knew about it and were against it kind of a voice, really. It's kind of, you know, made people aware of it, so any protests of it against it can go on.
Actually in the next few months, I think, or maybe early next year, they're submitting something to the European Commission to, you know, for them to get involved. But the problem is the new European Commissioner for, I think, Environmental Affairs or something like that is actually a Maltese politician. He's going to be a Maltese politician.
Okay.
So there's some worry there whether he or she will, you know, actually listen to these.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. I mean,
it's quite bad.
I think one thing I feel quite proud about being British is whenever these problems do arise, there is, you know, a lot of people do kind of get involved saying, "Oh no, this isn't right. We should change this," which is very good, of course. And you know, I think that's one of the main reasons why I'm proud to be British.
Yeah,
you know,
campaigning works in the UK.
It really does, you know, and I've seen quite a few cases of it where, you know, things have started out very small with just like one person saying, "Right, this needs to be changed." And it's just kind of spiralled, and more people have got involved with it as people are more aware of it, and it does inspire change. The change does happen as a result.
Exactly. If it has a simple message and, you know, it resonates within people, then it would work. A campaign should work. Yeah.
It's why now, like, because I've seen so many success stories, I say to people, you know, if you think something is wrong, you have the power to change it. You can. It's, you know, things always start small and then they grow and you can change it. And let's hope that happens with this, really.
I certainly hope so. There's a website which we should post on the Facebook page.
Mm-hmm. I was about to mention
Packham's
that.
website, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, there's two. I think Chris Packham has posted a lot of videos on his website as well, hasn't he? So I think it's chrispackham.co.uk, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. We will post a link on the webpage. But also, if you actually want to find out more about campaigning to stop the hunting, there is actually a website that has been set up recently called birdlifemalta.org. And this is about trying to campaign to try and stop it. So if you really feel passionately about this and want to get involved, I really suggest you go and visit that website. And like I said, hopefully something can be done about it.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. So,
the power of people.
The power of people, indeed. So now we're going to move on to our fun fact of the week. So, Ekbal, this is a directed question at you. Which big cat do you think has the strongest bite?
Oh, big cat.
Go on, you got shows like cheetahs, lions, leopards.
Tiger.
A tiger.
It's the biggest cat, so that's the way. I picked tiger.
Tiger is actually it's one of the top ones, but it's not the first.
Jaguar.
It is the jaguar. Yes. Well done. Second time lucky. The cat which has the strongest bite is in fact the jaguar. It's been found, and this is of course done relative to its weight. So the animals are weighed, and then the bite is measured. And apparently, yes, the jaguar does have the strongest bite. And it's been compared to about 9 different cat species, and it was way ahead of there. So I think that's a lesson not to get bitten by a jaguar.
Incidentally, do you remember the scientific name for jaguar? Do I remember it?
It's a Panthera. I have Google right next to me. I'm so tempted.
You can't do that.
I should know this, but Panthera leo is the lion.
Mm-hmm.
Panthera tigris is a tiger.
Yep.
But I cannot remember the jaguar. What's the jaguar? Do you know it?
Panthera onca.
Onca. Oh, right. Can I just point out that the geologist knew that over the zoologist, so I'm actually quite embarrassed about that. I should go.
Well, I'm a massive big cat fan. So.
Yes, Ekbal loves big cats, so yeah, he probably knows more than me on that area. So yeah, so there's our fun fact. The jaguar has the strongest bite of all the big cats.
Relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, of course.
You have to be scientifically accurate now.
We do, of course we do. And coming on from our theme of climate change last week, a very interesting study has recently been posted about how climate change is actually making male bees more interested in sex than pollinating flowers.
Oh dear.
Which that's just the standard man, isn't it? Really, isn't it?
Well, I don't know whether climate change is having any effect on male populations out there.
Maybe they've just suddenly got their priorities right. Well, I don't know about but
bee populations are declining, so it's probably a good thing.
They are, of course, and it's, even people who aren't ecologists know how important the role of bumblebees are in our environment. But like I said, this study suggests that climate change could be making male bees too easily distracted by females to actually pollinate. So, and there's research that was done by the University of East Anglia. And they suggested that warmer springs have resulted in both bees and flowers emerging a lot earlier than they usually do. And as a result of that, by the time the flowers are blooming, the bees are too busy mating with the females to actually help fertilise the plants. And warming by just a small amount, like 2 degrees Celsius, can cause the males to emerge much earlier than they should, which means they're not as synchronised with the orchids. And, so it's really a case of all these birds suddenly emerge, the flowers aren't quite out yet, they're mating, and then suddenly the flowers appear, they're like, oh, just ignore them while we finish, kind of thing. That's basically what's going on. Yeah. So it's... it's because the female bees are emerging earlier as well as the males, so this is the main problem, how they are now becoming, as a result of climate change, out of sync with each other, so we do have this problem. But and Professor Davey at the university, who actually conducted this study, said that not only could this have severe implications for crop productivity, it could also lead to the breakdown of a lot of interspecies interactions that have evolved over thousands of years to respond to these seasonal cues. So just these small changes in temperature have just changed things evolutionary. Well, all this, what evolution has kind of been, how these bees have been made to function it's kind of just wiped out this small change in temperature. So, but yeah, so there's our interesting story of the week. And there was a bee and pollinator strategy launched earlier this week, and the Environment Secretary actually said the government was aiming to reverse declines in pollinating insects such as bees, and because they do contribute, I think it was something like £430 million a year in pollinating crops and something like that. I don't exactly know how they're going to reverse the declines. That might be something very interesting to try and find out.
It's really a problem, actually. The bumblebee population, it's almost like a crash in Europe. And no one actually knows why.
It's true, yes. The bees are disappearing.
There's various, possible causes that people are pointing fingers to, but no one actually really knows why they're declining. And they are a massively important. For
they are
pollinating our crops.
Hugely important. So
there was a really strange report, or maybe it was a documentary or so somewhere, that there's a group in China, because their bee population has just completely collapsed. They're pollinating flowers with their hands.
We actually, in one of our ecology modules...
This is an experimental, I think.
I was thinking that.
It's not real.
I mean, one of our ecology modules in first year, they actually showed this guy who actually gets paid by farmers to fly his helicopter low near the crop, so he blows wind and so he creates this massive wind. Apparently it does, according to people. He is actually a very good, human bumblebee in a big. He should actually paint his helicopter black and yellow. That would actually be really cool.
Do you know? But we're laughing, but it is. If this comes to this stage, then we're in trouble already.
Oh, it's true. It is a very serious issue, but hopefully it will be rectified, as this government seems to be quite confident that they can do something about it. But I don't know if plans have been put in place yet, whether they, what they're going to do. But I'll try and find out and try and see if I can find out for next show, so I can mention what they are planning to do to help pollinate the bees.
How can we save the bumblebees? On that note, by the way, just before we go on to the next topic, did you know that the School of Earth and Environment has 3 beehives?
Does it?
Yeah, we have 3 beehives that's managed by the Sustainability Action Group within the department, and it's located just to the side of the main front building. So next to the, how do we get out? If you go out the back of the Union and turn left, you'll see in the corner 3 beehives in a wire fence. So I think we've had those for a few years now, and we make our own honey.
That's so you just make, is that what they're for? Just making your own honey?
The honeybees, yeah.
Wow, that's quite cool. Actually, that's really cool.
The kudos to the Sustainability Action Group.
Yeah, this is why once again you should come to Leeds Earth and Environment.
You should come to study in the School of Earth and Environment because we have bees.
I think we should get paid for this. We're selling them every week. We are selling them every week. So now it's time for our first break, and then straight afterwards Ekbal will be talking about all his lovely subjects to do with Earth and Environment. So the song we are going to play is a very lovely song, which is one of our favourites, and that is Fireflies by Owl. Well, welcome back to Natural World here on Leeds Student Radio. That was Fireflies by Owl City. So now we're going to move on to Ekbal now. What have you got to talk to us today, Ekbal?
Okay, so it's my turn, right? Okay, so the first story today is, I think a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Icelandic volcanic eruptions, and it's ongoing and it's been going for the last couple of months now, actually. And I was lucky enough to catch up with Dr. Anja Schmidt from the School of Earth and Environment last week, and we got to sit together and talk about what's going on with this volcano and why all these gas emissions coming out and whether we should be worried about it. So it's a recorded interview, so we can play it if you could, Emma.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So thank you, Anja Schmidt, for coming to talk to us today about these volcanic eruptions going on in Iceland. So can you tell us a little bit about this volcanic eruption, something like how much lava has been produced and things like that?
Yes, of course. So since early summer, really, we saw loads of earthquake at a volcano in Iceland that's called Bardarbunga. And this is a really, really big volcano. It has a big glacier, 400 meters thick. But what happened then is basically that we had what we call a dike intrusion. So that means magma is moving away from the glacier, and it basically moved into an ice-free zone. And we could just see this magma moving based on measurements. So we had GPS measurements, so we could see tiny movements of Earth's crust. And then on 31st of August, we had a little eruption, so lava was jetting out of the ground.
So was this at Bardarbunga volcano?
So this was about 10-20 kilometers away from the glacier. So therefore it was just a little effusive eruption. So you had lava coming out of the ground, but there was no interaction with the glacier, so there was no magma-ice interaction, which is normally creating this explosive volcanic ash cloud.
So this wasn't an explosive eruption?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We have really just lava fountains at the ground, and basically just imagine the ground cracks open along, just imagine the ground zips open along a crack, and then you have like the lava fountains.
Very good, very good. And do you know how much lava has been produced?
Yes, so this is really astonishing. So what we can do is we can use satellites and try to measure the area. And then we have to make estimates about the volume, which is more difficult. But it's somewhere between half a cubic kilometer and 1 cubic kilometer.
Okay, I'm assuming that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Okay.
So in terms of area, basically I calculated last night for you, it would cover about 250 times Woodhouse Moor.
Oh wow, okay. Do you hear that, everybody? 250 times Woodhouse Moor.
Yeah, and if we think about the volume it produces, the amount of lava it spews out every day, you can fill about 8,000 Olympic swimming pools.
Blimey, gosh.
Every day.
Every single day. And that's been going for how long?
So this is ongoing now. We are having basically 2 months now.
Wow, okay. That's astonishing. There's a lot of volcanic activity there. Another thing this recent report mentioned is that every day about 35,000 tons of sulfur dioxide is produced, which is basically twice the amount coming out of all of Europe's smokestacks together. Is this something we need to be worried about?
So this is absolutely correct. It's a lot of SO2, and actually this is really stunning, I think. So everybody really was looking or expected another volcanic ash cloud, and now we have this eruption producing a lot of SO2. There's very little volcanic ash. There's actually no volcanic ash. And as you said, the amounts are really tremendous. So the problems, sulfur dioxide is a gas and it's toxic. So we know it has can have detrimental effects on human health. And we see in Iceland itself, we see basically what we call air quality warnings all over the place. So we have very high concentration of SO2 and also of its conversion products. So it converts to tiny particles. But we also had smaller air pollution episodes on the weekend 6th of September to 7th of September. So we had measurements in Ireland, but also in London, and again on about the 20th of September. So there we saw the highest measurements of SO2 in the UK and in Ireland since we cleaned up the air.
Oh wow!
End of the 1980s.
Okay, so there's a large spike in sulfur dioxide, and so how does that? Is that something we expected to happen more often now since this eruption has been ongoing?
So it strongly depends on the wind direction. It's that easy. So the eruption continues, and it did continue for 2 months, and then it depends just on the wind direction whether we see more spikes in sulfur dioxide. But I really want to stress these were short-lived spikes in air pollution. So there's no concern in the UK or Ireland in terms of effects on human health.
At the moment.
At the moment,
yes.
Exactly, because say if this eruption had a little hiccup, then it might produce even more SO2, and we know that from the history of Icelandic volcanism. And then it might be a problem, yes. Okay. But in Iceland, it starts to become a problem.
Yes, so I'm assuming people with like breathing problems or heart conditions, they are on high alert.
Absolutely. So we have people that are at high risk, people who suffer from asthma, for example. So, and I suppose the best you can do is you treat it like a normal anthropogenic or man-made air pollution episode. So the advice is normally you stay indoors, you don't do your normal activities like running and things like this. So this is a way of protecting yourself.
Okay.
But overall, you can imagine it's quite difficult if you live, say, in 50, 100 kilometers.
I can imagine, yes. So living your daily life must be an interesting experience in those situations.
Absolutely, and actually I think it's, again, if you look at this in terms of scientific experience, this is a fantastic opportunity to study how a community reacts to an ongoing eruption in Iceland. So we have examples of this in Hawaii and in Japan, but we have not seen anything like this in recent history in Europe. So I think there's ample opportunity here to make more studies and to look at health effects, but also how people perceive these eruptions and how they go about their own life.
Okay, brilliant. So we hope to hear more about this later on. One final question before we leave. How long do you think this eruption will go on for? And do you think there's a risk of it triggering other volcanic activity?
It's very difficult to tell with volcanic eruptions. So it could go on for another month. It could even go on for a year or even longer. Or it might stop tomorrow.
Okay, so it's difficult. And why is it so difficult to...
It's Mother Nature, right? We really don't know.
Okay.
We can look at historic examples of these kind of eruptions, and again, we had eruptive phases like this that lasted for 6-7 years. But as I said, it could stop tomorrow. We really don't know. It's very difficult. Volcanology is a really young science, and we only begin to understand and disentangle all these processes that control an eruption. You also asked whether it could trigger another volcano or not. Again, this is difficult to tell, but we can talk about a couple of scenarios and their likelihood. So I told you about this Bardarbunga eruption. Remember, that's the one with the glacier on top. So this glacier is subsiding. By now it's subsided 40 meters.
So it's sunk 40 meters, this glacier?
Absolutely.
Where has all that material gone?
So basically it goes out and jets out as lava along this crack in the Earth's crust.
Okay.
So there is concern that this volcano might erupt. So this would be a big eruption, probably producing a volcanic ash cloud, because there the magma would interact with the glacier.
I see, okay.
And then there's another scenario in the far distance from Bardarbunga, basically between Bardarbunga, this crack in the Earth's crust we have now, is another volcano called Askja. And you could imagine that this magma intrusion goes further and hits that old volcanic system. So, and then two magmas would mix and basically have a different chemistry.
And is that a bad thing?
Yes, they have a different chemistry, and these chemistries, they don't mix. And it could be very, we call it a sticky magma.
Okay.
And so this is highly explosive.
Oh, so that could trigger an explosive eruption in this volcano, Askja. And is this a smaller, bigger volcano?
So this volcano produced some of the biggest eruptions we've seen.
Okay, so that's something to keep an eye on, for sure.
But no one knows whether this is going to happen or not. It's probably most likely that this just stops.
Okay. But we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay, so thank you very much for Dr. Anja Smith talking about Icelandic volcanic gas emissions, and Anja is a postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Earth and Environment. So
it's very interesting. Does she actually? So she actually works in Iceland then. Most of the
Anja
time.
works on Icelandic volcanic eruptions and their effects, the eruptions' effect on the local populations and potential wider global effects from the gas and ash emissions.
That's incredible work. Incredible work she's doing out there. Absolutely fascinating stuff.
Check out her Twitter at Volcanophile, I think it is. I'll post it on the Facebook page, but yeah, check out her Twitter.
I like her Twitter name.
It's great,
it's brilliant. Absolutely, completely relevant as well to the subject. So, but yes, thank you for sharing that with us. That was an absolutely incredible interview by obviously an incredible person who, is just showing off the work that's been done here at the university.
Yeah, we did some great research here, and it's good to showcase it a little bit.
It really is.
Okay, so the next story for me is is recently the United States Geological Survey, a small branch of which is based in California, they have released an updated map of all the active fault lines within the country. So a fault line is basically a fracture in the ground on which energy is stored and released in an earthquake. Okay, so these are where earthquakes happen. And sadly, they've discovered there is an active fault line running right through Hollywood. Just outside Los Angeles. Hollywood is part of Los Angeles, and there's an active fault line running right through it. In particular, running right through a location where they're planning on building a skyscraper. So it's obviously not a good idea.
No, not at all. Are they still building this skyscraper?
Well, no. So they didn't. The plans to build the skyscrapers were there before they realised now there's an active fault line going through it. But now the map's released, they're going to rediscuss it, and the skyscraper is part of something called the Millennium Project, which is developing this part of Hollywood into this new, all techie and skyscrapers and all that business.
Okay.
And it's right in front of, if you know, the Capitol Records building. It's
know the
building. It's a quite famous
yes.
landmark in Hollywood.
A very famous landmark in Hollywood. Ironically, this would make a good movie.
I'm sure Hollywood has enough disaster movies.
That's true, yes. I think they have too many, if truth be told.
Most of them aren't scientifically accurate anyway.
Of course. This is probably why we shouldn't watch a disaster movie with you. Be like, that's wrong. This is wrong. That's not accurate. Yeah. I mean, dare I ask what you thought of The Day After Tomorrow?
It was good, actually. Well, I do like these movies because they get some science across. Admittedly, they dress it up a bit in terms of killing people, destroying the world, etc. But hidden within all that is a little bit of science every now and then.
Okay, so that one passes, does it?
Sometimes.
Okay, because that's one of my favourite disaster movies, I'd say. So as long as that passes a bit, I'm alright with that.
Yeah. I think I like anything like this. Watching a movie, you should take off your scientific hat and put on your entertainment hat and watch it.
We should start a new hashtag Ekbal Rate My Disaster Movie
Rate
to see
disaster movie.
so you can see if it's scientifically accurate enough to be filmed.
Dear. That could go horribly wrong.
It'd be brilliant. I think it'd be brilliant.
Anyway, so about this earthquake. So Hollywood is part of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is actually in, as we all know, California, and California has probably the most famous fault line in the world, the San Andreas Fault, which is a very, very long, again, a big fracture in the ground. It's about, 1,300 kilometers long. It's a really, really big fault.
It's a massive.
And it's had many earthquakes on it, historically. In particular, Los Angeles had a rather dangerous one in 1994 called the Northridge earthquake. It was a magnitude 6.7, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I heard about that one.
Killed 72 people in LA, LA. And, cost about $12.5 billion worth of damage. So, I mean, earthquakes aren't new in LA. And although since 94, the population of the city has gone up to about 4 or 5 million, I think. So, they need to be prepared. And
they do.
And you can't go and build skyscrapers on top of fault lines without proper planning and engineering considerations.
It's very true. It's very true. And what magnitude was that? The Northridge earthquake again?
6.7.
6.7. And how many people died?
72.
The thing I always find quite interesting about that is if you look at the amount of people that die in developing countries from earthquakes like that, it's so much more than in developed countries. And I suppose is that
not always, but you're right. And that's a topic for another day altogether. But I can give you some hints. California and places like California and Japan and New Zealand and Chile and things like that, countries like that, they have realised they have an earthquake problem. And they're investing a lot of money into designing buildings and structures and bridges in particular that don't fall over in earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
So because in an earthquake, it's not the earthquake that kills you. The ground shaking will make you fall over, but it won't kill you. What kills you is things falling on you, particularly if things flying around your room, the building falling on you, the bridge falling on you,
or
the bridge falling from underneath you.
It's a famous quote, isn't it?
It's a famous quote by a really, really, like a hero of mine almost, Nicholas Embraces, who's unfortunately passed away now. He's a famous earthquake scientist, and he said, earthquakes don't kill you, buildings do. And we kind of repeat it like a mantra all the time now.
I'm not surprised. It's very relevant. It's very true. It really is. I mean, if you're in an open field and there's an earthquake, you know, you're shaking around a bit and all that. You know, maybe a few cows next to you fall over, but other than that, you know, there's no buildings that, you know, there's nothing to fall on you really if you're in an open field. So it is a very true saying.
It's very true, and this is why you can save yourself by building properly. So this is what California and LA, places like that, do very well. They build and design structures that can withstand certain amount of shaking, and luckily only very few to none people die in these events. There was an earthquake in Napa Valley, the wine producing part of California. When was it now? In the summer. At this point in the summer, don't remember now.
Mm-hmm.
It was a moderate sized earthquake, but nobody died. If that earthquake happened in Afghanistan, thousands would have died probably. And it's almost like a testament of the great engineering that goes on in these countries. And what I personally want to do is, you know, transfer these skills and engineering expertise from these developed countries, where people survive earthquakes and disasters like this, and transfer them over to the countries that need them even more, like Iran, Afghanistan, the lower income countries where, you know, they pay the price, and the ultimate price is their life, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes, that's true.
But anyway, so Hollywood. I'm sure they'll do something about it. They are very sensible people out there.
I'm sure they will.
They realise that it's a problem, and they will hopefully do something about it.
Ideally,
they won't build the skyscraper on it. I think they have a rule which says if you have identified an active fault, you can't have a building within 300 feet either side of the fault.
That's very wise. Very wise.
Very good. And also the building has to be earthquake proof and all that business.
Yeah, it's good these regulations are in place to prevent, you know, being so many.
You don't want a disaster, especially in places. I mean, like the Northridge earthquake cost $12.5 billion in terms of damage and asset loss. I mean, now it's going to be even more because there's more people living there, more buildings, and more businesses. So, you know, anything from tens to hundreds of billions probably. So you want to avoid these kind of disasters, really.
Of course.
I mean, the Napa Valley earthquake earlier in the summer, it cost about $1 billion in wine production, loss in wine production because an earthquake went through the entire valley. Well, and nobody died, which is great. No one died.
That's good news then.
Yes. Anyway, so there you go. Hollywood is sitting on an active fault line. There we go. And the next story is actually, I mentioned last week that the new IPCC summary report is coming out, and it is out. And I forgot to post it on our Facebook page. Sorry, I'll do that today. And yes, it's out, and it came out last Sunday. In fact, and this is like the ultimate, like the Bible for our knowledge about the climate now and projected future, and our best predictions for it in the future. So yeah, and these are done by the top scientists in the world in climate science studies. So yeah, so hopefully you believe what they're saying, right? I mean, if you have an illness, you go to see the doctor who is a specialist.
Of course, so these are the people to trust, really.
Exactly, and if you have, if this climate issue, we go to the climate scientist, and we're all happy, hopefully. But unfortunately, there's been a massive mistrust of what the scientists are saying, unfortunately. And okay, and yeah, so and as a result, the Poland, let me get these countries right. Poland, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and Latvia have categorically rejected all plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by the end of the century. Reduce as in completely reduce it, as in 0%. Zero.
Wow, that'd be quite an achievement.
Well, we need it though, and the scientists are saying that to stop global warming below dangerous levels. Dangerous levels here is said to be 2 degrees Celsius. We need to limit greenhouse warming to 2 degrees. Anything above that will become, they say, quotations, dangerous. And what they mean by dangerous is another discussion in its own rights. But 2 degrees is the dangerous level. And to limit it, they're saying Europe has to, or in fact I think most of the world has to drop its greenhouse gas emissions to 0 by the end of the century. And that's a tall ask.
That is a very tall ask. I was just about to say.
A lot from these countries.
It is.
And that's understandable. But, we need to do it. Otherwise, we are going to pay the price for it. Not just us, the rest of the world will. And,
sure will, yes.
And also, I mean, so that's my scientific mind talking.
It's
but
not time to be selfish.
No, but if you look at it from their point of view, these sort of countries are heavily based on the coal industry. That is their biggest energy source, etc. So obviously, it's a huge loss in money and income, etc. So I mean, you can almost understand why they do it, but you realise that this is not the sustainable way forward. Investing in green and clean energies is going to be the way forward. Anyway, so yeah, the countries Poland, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and Latvia have categorically rejected all IPCC plans to reduce greenhouse gas warmings to 0 by the end of the century.
So what happens now then? Do they still try and do it as much as possible?
Well, I think they're still. I think the idea is they still will reduce it little.
But they're just saying they can't. They don't think they can do that.
Yeah, I think that's the plan anyway. I mean, this is quite interesting because everybody, the science is clear now, and it has been clear for a few years now. But even now, it's clearest of all. The world is warming, and most of it is due to human influences, gas emissions, etc. And we need to do something about it. The science is clear now, and everyone agrees on that. When it comes to the politics, that's when it becomes a problem. Then it's politics. Then in different issues compete against each other, whereas poverty and climate and sustainability and energy, and they all compete, and then it becomes a bit of a warfare.
It does. It really does. But so yeah, thank you very much for that, Ekbal. That's all very interesting stuff, and of course we will be posting all the various things on our Facebook page. But I just want to very quickly draw your attention to something that doesn't quite come under the natural world topic, but it's a cause that me and Ekbal do feel very strongly about. And obviously you've probably heard about the Ebola crisis that's going on in Africa at the moment, and it's already killed thousands of people. And there is actually now a charity set up through Save the Children, which it's a very famous charity, you might have heard of it. And Stephen Hawking, a very famous scientist,
I love Stephen Hawking,
which yes, a bit of a fan of.
I'm a massive fan of him.
He has actually kind of posted on his Facebook page as kind of a bit of a cry for help, really. And he did actually say, and I will quote now what he said: these children have no voice. That's why I'm giving them mine. So please help in raising awareness for these children, and let us do whatever we can to end war. What will you give? So disease. I read that wrong.
Disease.
I read that wrong. I do apologise.
Just looked up war.
But he's done incredible work with it, and he has set up this Facebook page to try and help, really, just to try and get you to donate money towards it. We've already donated, haven't we? So if you go onto Stephen Hawking's webpage, you will be able to see it, but we will probably post a link on ours as well if you want to donate to this wonderful cause.
It's a fantastic cause, and also a very important cause, because I mean, this is almost a test of now how much can we get together behind a single united cause that actually will affect not just people in the low-income countries, but us, ultimately, us, eventually. So let's stand tall and stand straight and stand behind them.
Exactly, yeah. And, we need to stop it, and together we can. So positive, that's all. And one last thing before we wrap up, Ekbal, what do you have?
Oh, yes, so I don't know whether some of you guys might have seen this already, but the BBC have released this website called Your Life on Earth. And it's basically, you put in your date of birth, your gender, your height, etc. And it gives you all these really cool stats about, what's happened to the world since you were born. It's really interesting. It says, say something like, since you were born, you have grown this tall, but a sequoia tree would have grown this tall. So, like, damn, this tall tree was taller than I did. Or like,
it's quite fascinating, isn't it? We saw it today, and it's
or like,
pretty
you've
incredible.
had this many earthquakes in the world since you were born, or a fly would have had 8,000 generations of families in your lifetime, or your heart would have beaten so many million times, but a blue whale would have beaten a lot less.
It's
really
it's
cool
quite
and really
fascinating.
good fun.
It is really fascinating. So do check it out if you can. So because it is, I find it really funny to look and see, like, oh wow, where have I come in by 21 years in life? So yes, do go and check that out. But unfortunately, that is all we have got time for, I'm afraid. So we hope you enjoy the show, and we will be back at the same time next week at 2:30 p.m. So of course, don't forget to tune in. In the meantime, do visit our Facebook page. It's called Natural World, and we're on 99 likes at the moment.
Just one like,
so just one more, just someone get their friend or their a relative to like our page, because we've been sitting on 99 for a little while now, and we would really like 100 likes. We would really appreciate it.
Or otherwise we'll start naming and shaming on live radio.
Yes, people on our Facebook friends who haven't liked it yet. So that's pressure, guys, pressure. So, as always, thank you very much. You can follow me and Ekbal on Twitter. We've got our Twitter account on our Facebook page, but that is generally where we will post up all of the updates. So, to play us out, we will be playing an awesome song by Michael Jackson called Man in the Mirror, and we will hopefully see you next week. Have a good week.
Bye.